Chuck Yeager went horseback riding 2 days before his historic X-1 flight and broke his ribs. The doctor told him to cancel the flight, but Chuck didn't tell anyone. He didn't take painkillers, hid the medical report, and entered the cockpit with broken ribs. When he reached Mach 1 on October 14, 1947, every breath hurt, but he was changing aviation history. How did this West Virginia farm boy manage to ignore pain and achieve the impossible? Chuck Yeager's story isn't just an aviation achievement story, it's also the purest example of American spirit. From humble beginnings to extraordinary accomplishments, from rural simplicity to cutting-edge technology, from war heroism to peacetime innovation. This man's journey from a small farm town in West Virginia to becoming a World War II ace pilot who shot down 13 enemy aircraft, then pushing aviation's boundaries as a test pilot, and finally, breaking the sound barrier to usher in a new era of human flight, is an incredible transformation from determination to legend. Here are the incredible details you'll see in this story. Chuck showed exceptional mechanical aptitude from childhood. At age 8, he could disassemble and reassemble a truck engine. This natural talent led him to the Air Force's most dangerous assignments. Throughout his World War II career, Chuck flew 64 combat missions and achieved 13 confirmed kills. Once his own aircraft was shot down, but he evaded in enemy territory and returned to Allied lines with the help of the French resistance. This experience significantly boosted his confidence. Throughout his test pilot career, Chuck flew 200-plus different aircraft types and constantly pushed aviation's boundaries. X-1, X-15, F-104. Each aircraft brought unique challenges and risks. If you can walk away from it, it's a good landing, Chuck would say. The sound barrier breaking achievement reached epic proportions. Scientists thought Mach 1 could be potentially fatal. Aircraft could lose control, experience structural failure, or the pilot could lose consciousness. But Chuck felt curiosity rather than fear. The most impressive part is this. Chuck accomplished the historic flight with broken ribs, but didn't complain. The philosophy pain is just weakness leaving the body characterized his entire career. Before we dive into Chuck Yeager's incredible story, let us quickly introduce ourselves. On this channel, we share the world's most inspiring true stories. We tell tales of the power of human will, the limits of courage, and the epic journeys of people who achieved the impossible. If you want to watch more of these compelling stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. This way, you'll be notified immediately when we upload new videos. We also love interacting with you in the comments. How did this story affect you? Have you faced major challenges in your own life? Or what other heroes' stories would you like us to cover? Share in the comments below. We read and respond to all of them. Now let's get to Chuck Yeager's magnificent journey, from West Virginia mountains to Army Air Corps training, from P-51 Mustang cockpit to X-1 rocket plane, and finally to the historic achievement at Mach 1 with broken ribs. Chuck's story shows us that true achievement comes from overcoming physical discomfort and breaking mental barriers. Courage, determination, technical expertise, all of these were necessary ingredients for his ultimate test, the sound barrier flight. Are you ready? Then let's begin this incredible journey from farm boy to aviation legend. Charles Elwood Chuck Yeager was born on February 13, 1923, in Myra, West Virginia. His father, Albert Hal Yeager, was a local gas driller, while his mother, Susie May, was a housewife. Chuck's childhood was typical of Depression-era rural America. Economic hardship, self-reliance, practical skills development. But Chuck showed a different aptitude when it came to mechanical things. Myra had a population of only 40 people, and the closest significant town was 30 miles away. This isolation forced Chuck to become resourceful. Broken tools, malfunctioning equipment, transportation problems, every challenge required a creative solution. Chuck was naturally mechanically inclined and was fascinated by anything with moving parts. At age 8, Chuck accomplished his first mechanical achievement. When the family truck's engine malfunctioned, his father wanted to go to town for repairs, but Chuck said, "Let me try first," and approached the engine with a toolbox. Hours later, the engine was running perfectly. This incident was the first demonstration of Chuck's mechanical genius. School was challenging for Chuck, but for different reasons. Academic subjects seemed boring, and he preferred practical applications. He found mathematics useful for solving mechanical problems, but literature and history were less interesting. Teachers recognized his intelligence but also noted his resistance to traditional learning methods. Hunting was a major activity in Chuck's childhood. The West Virginia mountains were full of game, and the family depended on hunting for meat. Chuck became an exceptional marksman at an early age. Natural hand-eye coordination, patience, precision, these skills would be invaluable in his later flying career. During his high school years, Chuck's academic performance improved, but he remained practically oriented. Auto mechanics, woodworking, metalworking, he excelled in hands-on subjects. He participated in sports and maintained physical fitness. Leadership qualities began to emerge. As graduation approached, Chuck considered future options. Local job opportunities were limited, and military service seemed an attractive alternative. World War II was raging in Europe, and American involvement seemed possible. Aviation was an emerging field, offering exciting opportunities. In 1941, Chuck enlisted in the Army Air Corps. The initial plan was to become an aircraft mechanic, but the recruiter suggested pilot training. "You've got good coordination and mechanical sense," he said. "Flying might suit you." Chuck decided to attempt pilot training. Basic training began at Maxwell Field, Alabama. Military discipline required adjustment, but Chuck adapted successfully. Physical conditioning was relatively easy due to his West Virginia outdoor life. He learned military procedures and began demonstrating leadership potential. The flight training program was rigorous. Ground school, basic flying principles, aircraft systems, navigation, meteorology. The academic workload was intensive. Chuck initially struggled with technical subjects but overcame them with persistence. The practical flying aspects came naturally. Primary flight training was conducted at Tuskegee Institute. The Stearman PT-17 biplane was the first aircraft Chuck soloed. The experience was exhilarating. Freedom of flight, three-dimensional movement, aircraft control. He was immediately hooked on aviation. Basic flight training introduced more advanced aircraft, AT-6 Texan, BT-13 Valiant. Performance demands increased, and the elimination rate was significant. Chuck continued to excel, and instructors praised his natural flying ability. Advanced flight training introduced fighter aircraft, P-39 Airacobra, P-40 Warhawk. Combat tactics, gunnery training, formation flying, skills specialized for combat operations. Chuck graduated as one of the top students and earned his fighter pilot wings. In 1943, Chuck received an overseas assignment in the European theater. He was assigned to the 357th Fighter Group based in England. He would fly P-51 Mustang aircraft, one of the war's most advanced fighters. Real combat was approaching, and Chuck was eager to test his skills. The initial months in England were spent on training and familiarization. The P-51 was a complex aircraft, but Chuck quickly mastered its advanced systems. Long-range missions, high-altitude operations, precision bombing escort. Mission types were varied and demanding. His first combat mission was flown in March 1944. It was a bomber escort mission over Germany. Chuck was nervous but excited for actual combat experience. The mission was successful, and enemy contact was minimal, but Chuck got a taste of combat flying. Following missions became more challenging. German Luftwaffe resistance was increasing, and they were encountering experienced pilots. Chuck achieved his first aerial victory in April 1944. he shot down a Messerschmitt Bf-109 with precise gunnery. His confidence was significantly boosted. In March 1944, Chuck's own aircraft was shot down over enemy territory. His P-51 took a flak hit, and he had to make an emergency landing. He was alone in the French countryside, with a high risk of capture. He used survival training and sought help from the local population. The French resistance contacted Chuck and organized an escape plan. He hid in safe houses for weeks and gradually moved toward Allied lines. He crossed the Spanish border and eventually returned to England. The experience was harrowing, but taught valuable lessons about survival and evasion. Army Air Corps policy removed evaded pilots from combat for security reasons, but Chuck personally appealed to General Eisenhower to return to combat. Permission was granted and Chuck resumed flying. This determination was characteristic of Chuck's entire career. During the remaining war period, Chuck achieved multiple aerial victories. In October 1944, he experienced an exceptional day. He destroyed 5 German aircraft in a single mission. This performance confirmed his ace status and established his reputation in the squadron. At war's end, Chuck had completed a total of 64 combat missions and achieved 13 confirmed victories. He had earned ace pilot status, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and multiple decorations. But in Chuck's view, the war was just the beginning of his aviation career. The post-war period presented new opportunities. The test pilot program was expanding and experimental aircraft development was accelerating. Chuck volunteered for test pilot training and was accepted. A new chapter was starting in aviation. Test pilot school was located at Edwards Air Force Base in California. The curriculum was intensive: aerodynamics, aircraft systems, test procedures, data analysis. The academic challenge was significant, but Chuck persevered. He continued to excel in the practical flying aspects. After graduation, Chuck was assigned to the Experimental Aircraft Test Program. The Bell X-1 rocket plane was the primary focus, designed to break the sound barrier. Scientists were uncertain whether the human body could survive at Mach 1 speeds. Chuck volunteered to be a test pilot. The X-1 was a revolutionary aircraft. Rocket engine instead of conventional propeller, streamlined fuselage, innovative control systems. The technology was cutting-edge, but unproven. Previous test flights had been conducted at subsonic speeds with successful results. Approaching Mach 1 required an incremental approach. Each flight attempted slightly higher speeds, and aircraft behavior was carefully monitored. Chuck adopted a methodical approach and conducted systematic data collection. On October 12, 1947, Chuck went on routine horseback riding to relax. The horse spooked and Chuck was thrown violently. The landing was awkward and he immediately felt sharp pain in the rib area. Medical examination revealed that 2 ribs were cracked. The flight surgeon was definitive: no flying until ribs heal. Minimum 2 weeks recovery. The historical flight was scheduled for October 14th, and postponement would be a major disappointment. Chuck faced a decision: report the injury and delay the flight, or conceal the injury and proceed. Chuck chose concealment. He masked the pain in public and maintained normal behavior. Privately, the discomfort was significant. Breathing was painful, movement was restricted, sleep was difficult. But determination overrode physical discomfort. On the morning of October 14, 1947, Chuck arrived at Edwards Air Force Base with his normal routine. Flight preparations were standard and nobody suspected the injury. Chuck was careful with his movements but maintained a normal outward appearance. The pre-flight briefing covered technical details: flight plan, air-launched from B-29 mothership, rocket engine ignition, gradual acceleration toward Mach 1, data collection, safe landing. Risks were discussed, but Chuck projected confidence. Entering the X-1 cockpit was challenging with injured ribs, tight space, awkward position, physical strain. Every movement caused sharp pain. But Chuck persevered and secured the cockpit. The B-29 takeoff was smooth and altitude was gained to the launch position. Chuck checked systems and tested flight controls. Everything appeared normal. but the rib pain was a constant reminder of his physical condition. The launch sequence was initiated at 20,000 feet. The X-1 dropped from the B-29, and Chuck immediately ignited the rocket engine. Acceleration was dramatic, and G-forces were significant. The injured ribs experienced additional stress, but Chuck maintained control. Speed gradually increased to Mach 0.9, then to 0.95. Aircraft behavior was stable, and control response was normal. Chuck's confidence grew, and he prepared for the final approach to Mach 1. At Mach 0.96, shock waves began forming on the aircraft. Buffeting increased and control surface effectiveness diminished. Chuck experienced the phenomenon firsthand, but training had prepared him. At Mach 0.98, intensity increased significantly. The aircraft was shaking violently. Control inputs had delayed response. Visibility was affected by condensation. Chuck maintained a steady hand and continued course. As Mach 1 was approached, a sudden change occurred. Buffeting stopped, controls became responsive, flight became smooth. Chuck realized the barrier had been passed. The sound barrier was broken. Speed continued to increase to Mach 1.05. Chuck maintained test conditions and collected data. Aircraft performance was excellent, and no structural problems were evident. The historical achievement was accomplished, but Chuck maintained a professional demeanor. The landing approach followed normal procedures. The Edwards runway was reached safely, and the aircraft was undamaged. The ground crew was excited, but Chuck gave a typically understated reaction. It was just like riding a train, except faster. Post-flight analysis confirmed the achievement. A maximum speed of Mach 1.06 had been reached, and all systems had performed nominally. Chuck had become the first human to officially exceed the speed of sound in level flight. Medical examination after the flight revealed the injury. The flight surgeon was concerned, but amazed at the performance, despite broken ribs. Chuck simply stated, "Pain doesn't stop progress." The news announcement created a worldwide sensation. An aviation milestone had been achieved, and a new era had begun. Chuck became an instant celebrity but didn't find fame comfortable. He preferred continued testing and flying. In subsequent years, Chuck continued experimental test flying. X-15 program, Century Series fighters, various experimental aircraft, always pushing boundaries and expanding knowledge. Risk was a constant companion, but Chuck maintained a calculated approach. During the Korean War period, Chuck returned to combat. He commanded F-86 Sabre aircraft and flew air superiority missions. He gained additional combat experience and enhanced his leadership skills. In his later career, Chuck held various command positions, training programs, operational units, staff assignments. Leadership responsibilities increased, but he maintained his flying passion. He always remained a test pilot at heart. After retirement, following 34 years of military service, Chuck pursued civilian opportunities, consulting, public speaking, aviation advocacy. He shared his knowledge and experience with the next generation. Chuck Yeager's legacy is permanent in aviation history. The sound barrier breakthrough opened the space age and made supersonic travel possible. Modern aviation is directly descended from Chuck's pioneering work. His approach to challenges, methodical preparation, calculated risk-taking, persistence despite physical discomfort, became the standard for test pilots and astronauts. The right stuff that defined America's space program had its roots in Chuck's West Virginia farm boy determination. The broken ribs incident symbolized Chuck's entire career philosophy. Mission accomplishment took precedence over personal comfort. This mindset enabled him to push boundaries that others considered impossible and establish new standards for human achievement in aviation. Chuck Yeager's story of breaking the sound barrier with broken ribs shows that physical pain cannot stop mental determination. The journey from West Virginia farm boy to aviation legend is the perfect example of transformation from humble beginnings to extraordinary achievements. The most powerful lesson: true courage is overcoming physical discomfort. Chuck hid his pain because the mission was more important than individual comfort. The philosophy, "The first time you say, 'I can't,' you're done," characterized his entire career. The sound barrier breakthrough embodied universal principles: preparation, persistence, precision under pressure. Chuck proved that technical expertise must be combined with moral courage to achieve the impossible. You too can follow Chuck's example in your own sound barriers. Pursue your goals despite physical or mental discomfort. Make thorough preparation. Respond calmly to pressure. Remember, if you want something bad enough, pain becomes irrelevant. Chuck's legacy continues. Courage through adversity, excellence through preparation, achievement through determination. The values he learned in his farm childhood are still relevant today. Self-reliance, mechanical aptitude, fearless approach to challenges. True pioneers overcome physical limitations to achieve their vision. The greatest tribute we can give Chuck is to adopt his approach. Face challenges head-on. Never let pain stop progress.